The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the pretentious self-importance that only a room full of evolved species could muster. Hundreds of alien representatives perched, floated, or oozed in their designated areas, all united by their collective disdain for the lone human standing in the center of the judging circle. Commander Dax Horizon stood with arms crossed, his weathered face displaying what his species called the "are you kidding me" expression. After 5 hours of deliberation, the verdict was exactly what he'd expected from the moment he walked in. "The Council has reached consensus," announced High Counselor Vexi Quor, a gelatinous purple blob whose 6 eye stalks all managed to look down on Dax despite being physically shorter. "Humanity is deemed too unpredictable for galactic society." "You mean too successful?" Dax muttered. "The human delegation will not interrupt." Vexi's translucent body flushed a deeper purple. "Your species has violated 37 council conventions in just 12 standard cycles. Your resource consumption is alarming. Your adaptability threatens established order." A spindly green alien with compound eyes raised a delicate appendage. "They make other species uncomfortable. My people get stress molts just watching humans eat." "They domesticated carnivores for companionship," shrieked another. "Bithoide. They breathe corrosive gases. They consume fermented toxins for pleasure." Dax pinched the bridge of his nose. "That's called oxygen and alcohol, and neither are exclusive to humans." Vexi Quor's body rippled in annoyance. "Regardless, this council has decreed that humanity will be relocated to planet Tartarus, effective immediately." The chamber fell silent. Even the habitual complainers stopped mid-screech. "Tartarus?" Dax asked. "Isn't that?" "A Class 0 Deathworld," Vexi said, eye stalks quivering with what might have been satisfaction. "No sapient species has survived there longer than one standard cycle." Dax blinked. "You're sending us to a planet specifically classified as unsurvivable." "The Council believes this solution is appropriate," Vexi replied. "Transport ships await your colony. Observation satellites will document your species' final chapter for scientific purposes." As the council members filed out, a tall, avian representative leaned toward Dax. "Nothing personal, human. But betting pools have already opened on how quickly your species will perish. I've put credits on 3 months, so if you could manage that time frame." Dax's gaze hardened. "You might want to reconsider that bet." "So, this is Tartarus." Chief Engineer Maxine Max Rodriguez stood at the colony ship's observation deck, staring at the hellscape below. "Looks charming." Professor Elliot Graves, the designated colony leader, adjusted his spectacles. "Now, Max, let's not judge prematurely. I'm sure it has redeeming qualities." "Like what?" Max gestured at the scanners. "Gravity 1.3 times Earth normal, atmosphere with fluorine compounds, average surface temperature of 48 degrees Celsius, and she squinted at the readings. "Did that say acid rain?" "Technically, it's just highly acidic precipitation," Elliot corrected cheerfully. "Nothing a good umbrella won't fix." Max shot him a look that could have melted steel. "An umbrella? For acid rain? On a death planet?" The colony ships touched down in what satellite imagery suggested was the least horrible location, a rocky plateau surrounded by what appeared to be carnivorous vegetation. As the loading ramps descended, the first wave of colonists got their first breath of Tartarus air. "It smells like a gym sock dipped in battery acid," complained Dr. Tony Wilson, the colony's chief medical officer, as she adjusted her breathing apparatus. "Could be worse," replied Dax, who'd insisted on being the first human to set foot on their prison planet. "At least we can breathe it, without our lungs immediately dissolving." The first day passed in a blur of emergency shelter construction and equipment unloading. By nightfall, which arrived with unsettling speed as Tartarus had a 19-hour rotation, the basic colony structure was in place. "Sir." A young technician ran up to Dax, panic evident in his voice. "Something's trying to eat through the eastern barrier." The something turned out to be a swarm of beetle-like creatures with mandibles that literally dripped corrosive enzymes. They had already melted halfway through the colony's outer wall. Fascinating adaptation, Elliot observed, leaning dangerously close. Max yanked him back by his collar. Less admiring, more problem-solving, Professor. From the crowd, a gruff voice called out, "Has anyone tried the flamethrowers yet?" Dax raised an eyebrow. "We have flamethrowers." "Of course we have flamethrowers," Max replied matter-of-factly. "The first rule of engineering. Everything's better with flamethrowers." The beetle problem was resolved with enthusiastic application of said flamethrowers, followed by an unexpected discovery. The creatures were not only edible but, once properly cooked, tasted remarkably like lobster. In orbit above, the alien observation satellites recorded this development with growing confusion. "They're eating the local fauna?" Vexicor's voice crackled over the comm system to the observation team. "The same fauna that produces Class 3 biological acid?" "Affirmative," replied the observation officer. "They're calling it Tartarus thermidor and discussing wine pairings." By morning, 3 more attacks had been repelled, 2 more food sources discovered, and the humans had already started naming geographical features with inappropriate humor. The tallest nearby mountain was now officially Mount Certain Death, while a bubbling pool of sulfuric compounds had been christened Council's hot tub. The aliens watched in disbelief as the humans not only survived their first night, but seemed to be enjoying the challenge. 6 months passed, and the observation satellites had been upgraded twice to accommodate the unexpected longevity of their subjects. The original mission parameters had predicted human extinction within weeks, with a maximum outer limit of 3 months. Instead, the humans had built a functioning colony. "This is impossible," declared Councillor Ziktea, who had personally traveled to the observation station to witness the anomaly firsthand. A dignified member of the Centaurian species, his 4 arms were currently crossed in various postures of disbelief as he watched the monitor. "They've adapted the native crystal formations into solar collectors," explained the station's commander nervously, "and they've domesticated those acid-spitting lizard creatures." On the screen, a human child was riding one of said lizards like a pony, complete with a makeshift saddle. "Is that safe?" Ziktea asked, horrified. "Apparently human skin is remarkably resistant to the acid. They just call it a mild tingle, and the children have developed a game where they see who can withstand it longest." Down on the surface, Max stood in her workshop, surrounded by modified alien technology and native materials. She held up a translucent blue crystal to the light. "These Tartarus crystals are incredible," she explained to Dax. "They not only absorb solar energy at almost 98% efficiency, but they also filter out the harmful radiation waves." "Can we weaponize them?" Dax asked reflexively. Max rolled her eyes. Always the military mind. "Yes, we probably could, but right now I'm more interested in using them to improve our power grid." Across the colony, Professor Elliot Graves was leading an expedition into the deeper caverns beneath their settlement. His team had discovered that the seemingly hostile geology actually provided perfect natural insulation against the planet's temperature extremes. "It's remarkable," he enthused into his recorder. "The very conditions that make the surface so challenging have created these perfect subterranean environments. The heat and pressure have formed natural water filtration systems through the mineral deposits." Meanwhile, in the medical facility, Dr. Wilson was making her own discoveries. The native bacteria, she explained to a group of researchers, while initially triggering mild allergic reactions, have actually started helping our immune systems adapt to the planet. Our colonists are showing increased resistance to the atmospheric irritants with each passing month. When this data reached the observation station, Ziktea's facial tentacles went pale. "They're not just surviving," he whispered. "They're adapting on a physiological level." "Should we inform the council?" asked his assistant. Ziktea stared at the screens where humans were building, farming, and even recreating on a planet where they should have died months ago. "Yes," he said finally, "and recommend increased monitoring. Something unprecedented is happening here." 2 years into what was supposed to be humanity's final chapter, Tartarus had transformed from death sentence to unlikely success story. Dax stood at the edge of the colony's newest expansion, surveying the horizon where human ingenuity had begun to tame the untamable landscape. If the council could see us now, he mused to Max, who was calibrating some equipment beside him. Oh, they're seeing plenty, Max replied without looking up. We've counted 13 different observation satellites. I wave to them sometimes when I'm feeling cheeky. Below them, in what had once been a barren valley, hydroponic farms now stretched in neat rows, protected by crystal domes that filtered the harsh sunlight into something more nurturing. The acid rain that once threatened to dissolve their shelters was now collected in specially designed catchments, neutralized and used for irrigation after Max discovered its unique mineral properties. Incoming message from Professor Graves announced the comm system at Dax's hip. He says it's urgent but not emergency urgent. His exact words were scientifically thrilling but not, oh God, we're all going to die urgent. Elliot's scientifically thrilling discovery turned out to be revolutionary. In his laboratory, surrounded by rock samples and complex chemical analyses, he could barely contain his excitement. These mineral compositions, he explained, pointing to a holographic display, they're utterly unique in the known galaxy. The combination of pressure, heat, and Tartarus's unusual magnetic field has created what I'm calling composite unobtainium. Please tell me you're not actually calling it that, Max groaned. Fine, tartalium, Elliot conceded. But the point remains this material shouldn't exist under normal conditions. It's only possible here, and it has properties that defy conventional physics. Translation for the non-scientists? Dax prompted. It's worth more than all the credits in the galactic treasury, Elliot said simply. And we're the only ones who have it. The implications were staggering. Within months, Max had developed prototype technologies using tartalium that outperformed anything in the known galaxy: more efficient energy systems, stronger structural materials, and communications arrays that could cut through the interference that had previously isolated them from the wider universe. Word spread quickly. Despite the Council's efforts to maintain an information quarantine around Tartarus, unauthorized trading vessels began appearing at the edge of the system, offering supplies and equipment in exchange for even small samples of tartalium. We've got another one, reported the colony's security chief. Centaurian merchant vessel. Claims to have medical supplies and luxury goods. Let them land, Dax decided. But the usual protocol: they stay in their environmental suits and transactions happen in the trading dome. The alien visitors were invariably shocked by what they found: not a struggling outpost of desperate survivors, but a thriving colony with technologies that surpassed their own. In orbit, the official observation station was now permanently staffed with Council scientists documenting the inexplicable human success story. Siktar had been recalled to the Council headquarters, where emergency sessions were being held to discuss the Tartarus anomaly. They're not just surviving, he reported to the assembled Council. They're prospering in ways we never imagined possible. The very conditions we thought would destroy them have instead given them access to resources we didn't even know existed. Vexicor's eye stalks drooped in obvious dismay. This was not the intended outcome. 5 years after being dumped on Tartarus, the human colony had transformed into something entirely unexpected: a technological powerhouse that was beginning to draw uncomfortable attention from across the galaxy. The colony, now officially named Phoenix, humans and their mythological metaphors, had expanded to cover nearly 100 square kilometers. Tartarus's hostile environment had been not just tamed but harnessed, with the once deadly features now providing energy, resources and protection. Dax, now sporting a beard that he claimed gave him diplomatic gravitas, stood at the colony's central command center reviewing security feeds. We've got a council ship approaching, reported his security officer. Bigger than the usual observation vessels. Dax nodded. I was wondering when they'd finally make a move. Let's roll out the red carpet, and I mean that literally. Break out the actual red carpet we made from those fire-resistant fungal fibers. The council ship landed with practiced precision on the visitor's pad. The airlock cycled, and out stepped a familiar gelatinous purple form, now encased in a protective environment suit. Councillor Vexicor, Dax greeted with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. What a surprise. Come to check if we're dead yet? Commander Horizon. Vexi replied stiffly. The Council has sent me to address certain concerns. such as the unauthorized trading, the exploitation of Tartarus resources, the development of technologies that violate Council protocols. Interesting list, Dax mused, especially coming from the folks who sent us here to die. He led Vexi through the colony, making sure to showcase their most impressive achievements: the Tartalium processing plant, the crystal energy grid, the subterranean agricultural zones where plants thrived in the mineral-rich environment. This is impossible, Vexi kept repeating, eye stalks swiveling in disbelief. Yet here we are, Max said, joining them. Chief Engineer Rodriguez, she introduced herself. I believe you voted for my execution by planet? Vexi's body rippled uncomfortably. The Council has authorized me to inform you that certain measures will be necessary to contain the situation here. Contain? Dax raised an eyebrow. That sounds ominous. The Council is concerned about the broader implications of your activities, Vexi explained. We've detected unusual energy signatures consistent with weapons development. Dax and Max exchanged a look. You should know, Dax said casually, that we've been monitoring your observation satellites since day one. We know about the sabotage attempts, the bioweapon probes, and those special scientific instruments that were actually designed to trigger our volcano. Vexi's color paled considerably. I don't know what you're. We also know, Max interrupted, that 3 Council species have been secretly trying to develop their own Tartalium technology. Without much success, I might add. She tapped a command into her wrist device, and the lights in the room shifted to a deep blue. What's happening? Vexi demanded, eye stalks quivering. Just a small demonstration, Max replied calmly. We've just activated our planetary defense grid. Those satellites you thought were just passive observation posts. We've been using them to triangulate the positions of every Council vessel in the system. Displays around the room lit up, showing targeting solutions for dozens of ships. You've militarized, Vexi accused. We've protected ourselves, Dax corrected. There's a difference. One we learned the hard way when you exiled us to what you thought was certain death. Vexi's translator produced what might have been a nervous gulp. The Council will not respond well to threats. It's not a threat, Dax said evenly. It's a negotiation position. The Galactic Council chamber was significantly less crowded than the last time Dax had stood there. Many representatives were attending virtually, having declined to be physically present with the human delegation. Phoenix Colony hereby declares itself an independent human world, Dax announced to the assembled Council. We claim Tartarus and its surrounding system as sovereign human territory. Vexi Quor, still visibly shaken from the visit to Tartarus, floated limply in the moderator's position. The Council does not recognize unilateral declarations of. The Council exiled us there, Dax interrupted. You can't exile someone to a place and then claim you still own it. That's not how exile works. A murmur of reluctant agreement passed through the chamber. Furthermore, Dax continued, we're prepared to establish diplomatic and trade relations with any species willing to acknowledge our sovereignty. We have unique resources that could benefit the entire galaxy. One by one, various representatives signaled their interest, despite Vexi's gelatinous quivering of disapproval. There is, Dax added with a calculated pause, one non-negotiable condition. The chamber tensed. All diplomatic meetings must take place on Tartarus itself. Chaos erupted as dozens of species simultaneously voiced their objections. Dax waited patiently for the universal translators to catch up with the multilingual outrage. You can't expect us to visit a Class 0 Deathworld. He had trusted the spindly green representative who had once complained about humans making his species molt. It's perfectly safe, Dax assured him, for us. And we've prepared special visitor facilities with appropriate environmental controls. Think of it as an educational experience. Back on Tartarus, Max stood in the newly completed Galactic Embassy, a marvel of engineering that could accommodate the environmental needs of over 50 different species. Through the crystal viewport, she watched the first diplomatic shuttle approach. They actually came, remarked Dr. Wilson, now the colony's health minister. I wasn't sure they would. Curiosity and greed, Max replied. Two forces stronger than fear. The alien diplomats emerged from their shuttle with visible trepidation, even within their protective suits. They flinched at the sound of distant thunder and huddled together when the ground trembled slightly beneath their feet. Welcome to Tartarus, Max greeted them cheerfully. Don't worry about the tremors, that's just the southern volcano having a little indigestion. Perfectly normal. One of the diplomats made a sound that their translator couldn't quite process. Now, Max continued, leading them inside, let me show you what humans have accomplished on this unsurvivable world. Later that evening, Dax and Max shared a drink on the observation deck, watching the diplomatic vessels twinkling in orbit. 5 years ago, they sent us here to die, Dax mused, swirling his glass of Tartarus whiskey distilled from a native grain that had the peculiar property of being mildly hallucinogenic to most alien species, merely pleasantly warming to humans. And now they're lining up to beg for our resources, Max finished, clinking her glass against his. Funny how things work out. Below them, a group of alien diplomats were being guided on a tour of the colony's outer perimeter, visibly struggling with what humans now casually referred to as light gravity and mild weather conditions. Do you think they've learned their lesson? Max asked. Dax watched as one of the diplomats frantically tried to reinforce their environmental suit against a light drizzle of what was, by Tartarus standards, barely acidic rain. I doubt it, he replied with a grin, but I'm looking forward to teaching them a few more. As the Tartarus sun set behind Mount Certain Death, casting a glow that humans had come to find beautiful and aliens found terrifying, the Phoenix colony's lights illuminated the once deadly landscape, a beacon of human resilience in the face of impossible odds. And a reminder to the galaxy that underestimating humanity was always a recipe for regret.